Let's see. Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3. Am I coming through loud and clear? I shall just move my microphone to the middle of the desk. There we go. Ah, much better. Are you all happy to be back? Last we left off, Gandalf fell. I can't imagine the Fellowship is very happy with that development. However, it means we get to go to the grand land of Lothlórien, one which I am quite excited to visit. I don't know about you. So, this is chapter 18, page 373. We've made it quite far. There's only a little sliver left. Allow me to just adjust the volume. How is the music volume in comparison to my voice? Is it appropriate, or should it be lower, should it be higher? Mark that. I think that's everything else set. One moment. Right, I'll turn it up just a little bit. There we go. Alright. Chapter 18, page 373. Alas, I fear we cannot stay here longer, said Aragorn. He looked towards the mountains and held up his sword. Farewell, Gandalf, he cried. Did I not say to you, if you pass the doors of Moria, beware? Alas that I spoke true. What hope have we without you? He turned to the company. We must do without hope, he said. At least we may yet be avenged. Let us gird ourselves and weep no more. Come, we have a long road and much to do. They rose and looked about them. Northward the dale ran up into a glen of shadows between two great arms of the mountains, above which 3 white peaks were shining, Calelbil, Vanudil, and Caradhras, the mountains of Moria. At the head of the glen, a torrent flowed like a white lace over an endless ladder of short falls, and a mist of foam hung in the air about the mountain's feet. Yonder is the Dimral stair, said Aragorn, pointing to the falls. Down deep, cloven way that climbs beside the torrent we should have come, if fortune had been kinder. Or Caradhras less cruel, said Gimli. There he stands, smiling in the sun. He shook his fist at the furthest of the snow-capped peaks and turned away. To the east, the outflung arm of the mountains marched to a sudden end, and far lands could be descried beyond them, wide and vague. To the south, the misty mountains receded endlessly, as far as sight could reach. Less than a mile away, and a little below them, for they still stood high up on the west side of the dale, there lay a mere. It was long and oval, shaped like a great spearhead thrust deep into the northern glen, but its southern end was beyond the shadows under the sunlit sky. Yet its waters were dark, A deep blue light, clear evening sky, seen from a lamplit room. Its face was still and unruffled. About it lay a smooth sward, shelving down on all sides to its bare, unbroken rim. There lies the Mirrormere, Beat Keled Zaram, said Gimli sadly. I remember what he said, for you have joy of the sight, but we cannot linger there. Now long shall I journey ere I have joy again. It is I that must hasten away, and he that must remain. The company now went down the road from the gates. It was rough and broken, fading to a winding track between heather and wind that thrust amid the cracking stones. But still it could be seen that once, long ago, a great paved way had wound upwards from the lowlands of the dwarf kingdom. In places there were ruined works of stone beside the path, and mounds of green topped with slender birches, or fir trees sighing in the wind. An eastward bend led them hard by the sward of Mirrormere, and there, not far from the roadside, stood a single column, broken at the top. "That is Durin's stone," cried Gimli. "I cannot pass without turning aside for a moment to look at the wonder of the dale." "Be swift, then," said Aragorn, looking back towards the gates. "The sun sinks early. The orcs will not, maybe, come out till after dusk, but we must be away, far away, before nightfall. The moon is almost spent, and it will be dark tonight." "Come with me, Frodo," cried the dwarf, springing from the road. "I would not have you go without seeing Keled Zaram." He ran down the long green slope. Frodo followed slowly, drawn by the still blue water, in spite of hurt and weariness. Sam came up behind. Beside the standing stone, Gimli halted and looked up. It was cracked and weather-worn, and the faint runes upon its side could not be read. "This pillar marks the spot where Durin first looked into the Mirrormere," said the dwarf. "Let us look ourselves once ere we go." They stooped over the dark water. At first they could see nothing. Then slowly they saw the forms of the encircling mountains mirrored in a profound blue, and the peaks were like plumes of white flame above them. Beyond there was a space of sky. There, like jewels sunk in the deep stone, shone glinting stars. Though sunlight was in the sky above, of their own stooping forms no shadow could be seen. "O Keled Zaram, fair and wonderful," said Gimli. "There lies the crown of Durin, till he wakes. Farewell." He bowed and turned away, and hastened back up the greensward to the road again. "What did you see?" said Pippin to Sam, but Sam was too deep in thought to answer. Let me tilt my microphone up just a little. Hello, Nika darling. How are you doing today? Welcome, welcome. It's lovely to see you here. The road now turned south and went quickly downwards, running out from between the arms of the dale. Some way below the mere there came on a deep well of water, clear as crystal, from which a freshet fell over a stone lip and ran glistening and gurgling down a steep rocky channel. "Here is the spring from which the Silverlord rises," said Gimli. "Do not drink of it, it is icy cold. Soon it becomes a swift river, and it gathers water from many other mountain streams," said Aragorn. "Our road leads beside it for many miles, for I shall take you by the road that Gandalf chose. And first I hope to come to the woods where the Silverlode flows into the great river. Out yonder." They looked as he pointed, and before them they could see the stream leaping down to the trough of the valley, and then running on and away into the lower lands until it was lost in a golden haze. There lies the woods of Lothlórien, said Legolas. That is the fairest of all the dwellings of my people. There are no trees like the trees of that land, for in the autumn their leaves fall not, but turn to gold. Not till the spring comes and the new green opens do they fall, and when the boughs are laden with the yellow flowers, and the floor of the wood is golden, and the golden is the roof, and its pillars are of silver. For the bark of the trees is smooth and grey, so still our songs in Mirk would say. My heart would be glad if I were beneath the eaves of that wood, and it were springtime. My heart will be glad even in the winter, said Aragorn, but it lies many miles away. Let us hasten. I'm glad to hear you're doing well, Nika. You deserve to feel good. For some time, Frodo and Sam managed to keep up with the others. Aragorn was leading them at a great pace, and after a while they lagged behind. They had eaten nothing since the early morning. Sam's cup was burning like fire, and his head felt light. In spite of the shining sun, the wind seemed chill after the warm darkness of Moria. He shivered. Frodo felt every step more painful, and he gasped for breath. At last Legolas turned, and seeing them now far behind, he spoke to Aragorn. The others halted, and Aragorn ran back, calling to Boromir to come with him. I am sorry, Frodo, he cried, full of concern. So much has happened this day, and we have such need of haste that I have forgotten that you were hurt. And Sam too. You should have spoken. We have done nothing to ease you, as we ought, though all the orcs in Moria were after us. Come now, a little further on there is a place where we can rest for a little bit. There I will do what I can for you. Come, Boromir, we will carry them. Soon after they came upon another stream that ran down from the west, and joined its bubbling water with the hurrying of Silverlode. Together they plunged over a fall of green-hued stone, and foamed down into a dell. About it stood fir trees, short and bent, and its sides were steep, and clothed with hart's tongue and shrubs of whortleberry. At the bottom there was a level space through which the stream flowed noisily over shining pebbles. Here they rested. It was now nearly 3 hours after noon, and they had come only a few miles from the gates. Already the sun was westering. While Gimli and the 2 younger hobbits kindled a fire of brush and fir wood, and drew water, Aragorn tended Sam and Frodo. Sam's wound was not deep, but it looked ugly, and Aragorn's face was grave as he examined it. After a moment he looked up with relief. Good luck, Sam, he said. Many have received worse than this in payment for slaying of their first orc. The cut is not poisoned, as the wounds of orc blades too often are. It should heal well when I have tended it. Bathe it when Gimli has heated water. He opened his pouch and drew out some withered leaves. They are dry and some of their virtue has gone, he said. But here I still have some of the leaves of Ethelas that are gathered near Weathertop. Crush one in water and wash the wound clean, and I will bind it. Now it is your turn, Frodo. I am all right, said Frodo, reluctant to have his garments touched. All I needed was some food and a little rest. No, said Aragorn. We must have a look and see what the hammer and the anvil have done to you. I still marvel that you are alive at all. Gently he stripped off Frodo's old jacket and worn tunic, and gave a gasp of wonder. Then he laughed. The silver corselet shimmered before his eyes like the light upon a rippling sea. Carefully he took it off and held it up, and the gems on it glittered like stars, and the sound of the shaken rings was like the tinkle of rain in a pool. Look, my friends, he called. Here's a pretty hobbit skin to wrap an elven princeling in. If it were known that hobbits had such hides, all the hunters of Middle-earth would be riding to the Shire. And all the arrows of all the hunters in the worlds would be in vain, said Gimli, gazing at the mail in wonder. It is the Mithril coat. Mithril! I have never seen or heard tell of one so fair. Is this the coat that Gandalf spoke of? Then he undervalued it, but it was well given. I have often wondered what you and Bilbo were doing so close in his little room, said Merry. Bless the little hobbit. I love him more than ever. I hope we get a chance of telling him about that. There was a dark and blackened bruise on Frodo's right side and breast. Under the mail there was a shirt of soft leather. But at Frodo's left side, pardon me, but at one point the rings had been driven through it into the flesh. Frodo's left side also was scored and bruised where he had been hurled against the wall. While the others set the food ready, Aragorn bathed the hurts with water in which Athelas was steeped. The pungent fragrance filled the dell, and all those who stooped over the steaming water felt refreshed and strengthened. Soon Frodo felt the pain leave him, and his breath grew easy, though he was stiff and sore to the touch for many days. Aragorn bound some soft pads of cloth at his side. This mail is marvellously light, he said. Put it on again if you can bear it. My heart is glad to know that you have such a coat. Do not lay it aside even in sleep, unless fortune brings you where you are safe for a while, and that will seldom chance while your quest lasts. When they had eaten, the company got ready to go on. They put out the fire and hid all the traces of it. Then, climbing out of the dell, they took to the road again. They had not gone far before the sun sank behind the westward heights, and great shadows crept down the mountain sides. Dusk veiled their feet, and mist rose in the hollows. Away in the east, the evening light lay pale upon the dim lands of distant plain and wood. Sam and Frodo, now feeling eased and greatly refreshed, were able to go at a fair pace, and with only one brief halt, Aragorn led the company on for nearly 3 more hours. Allow me to just have another sip of water. And hello, Oswin, it's lovely to have you here. How are you doing today? Alright, let us continue. And yes, it is the ring's time. We have almost finished the book. Well, I'm glad you could make it. It's lovely having you here. I hope you enjoy the book as much as we have. It was dark, deep night had fallen. There were many clear stars. The fast waning moon would not be seen till late. Gimli and Frodo were at the rear, walking softly and not speaking, listening for any sound upon the road behind them. At length, Gimli broke the silence. Not a sound but the wind, he said. There are no goblins near. All my ears are made of wood. It is to be hoped that the orcs will be content with driving us from Moria. Maybe that was all their purpose, and then nothing else to do with us, with the ring. The orcs will often pursue foes for many leagues into the plain, if they have a fallen captain to avenge. Frodo did not answer. He looked at Sting and the blade was dull, yet he had heard something, or thought he had. As soon as the shadows had fallen about them, and the road was behind a dim, he had heard the quick patter of feet. Even now he heard it. He turned swiftly. There were 2 tiny gleams of light behind, or for a moment he thought he saw them, but at once they slipped aside and vanished. "What is it?" said the dwarf. "I don't know," answered Frodo. "I thought I heard feet, and I thought I saw a light, like eyes. I've thought so often since we first entered Moria." Gimli halted and stooped to the ground. "I hear nothing but the night speech of planted stone," he said. "Come, let us hurry. The others are out of sight." The night wind blew chill up the valley to meet them. Before them a wide grey shadow loomed, and they heard an endless rustle of leaves, like poplars in the breeze. "Lothlórien!" cried Legolas. "Lothlórien! We have come to the eaves of the Golden Wood. Alas that it is winter." Under the night the trees stood tall before them, arched over the road, and stream ran suddenly beneath their spreading boughs. In the dim light of the stars their stems were grey, and their quivering leaves a hint of fallow gold. "Lothlórien," said Aragorn. "Glad I am to hear again the wind in the trees. We are still little more than 5 leagues from the gates, but we can go no further. Here let us hope the virtue of the elders will keep us tonight from the peril that comes behind. If elves indeed still dwell here in the darkening world, said Gimli. It is long since any of my folk journeyed hither back to the land whence we wandered in ages long ago, said Legolas. But we hear that Lothlórien is not yet deserted, but there is a secret power here that holds evil in the land. Nevertheless, its folk are seldom seen, and maybe they dwell now deep in the woods and far from the northern border. Indeed, deep in the wood they dwell, said Aragorn, and sighed as if some memory stirred in him. We must fend for ourselves tonight. We will go forward a short way until the trees are all about us. Then we will turn aside from the path, seek a place to rest in. He stepped forward, but Boromir stood irresolute and did not follow. Is there no other way? He said. What other fairer way would you desire? Said Aragorn. A plain road that leads through a hedge of swords, said Boromir. By strange paths has this company been led, and so fair to evil fortune. Against my will we passed under the shades of Moria to our loss, and now we must enter the Golden Wood, you say. But of the perilous land we have heard in Gondor, and it is said that few come out who once go in, and of that few none have escaped unscathed. Say not unscathed, but if you say unchanged, then maybe you will speak the truth, said Aragorn. But lore wanes in Gondor, Boromir, if in the city of those who once were wise they now speak of evil of Lothlórien. Believe what you will, there is no other way for us, unless you would go back to Moria Gate, or scale the pathless mountains, or swim the great river all alone. Then lead on, said Boromir, but it is perilous. Perilous indeed, said Aragorn. Fair and perilous, but only evil need fear it, or those who bring some evil with them. Follow me. They had gone little more than a mile into the forest, and they came upon another stream, flowing down swiftly from the tree-clad slopes that climbed back westwards toward the mountains. They heard it splashing over a fall away among the shadows on their right. Its dark, hurrying waters ran across the paths before them, and joined the Silverlode in a swirl of dim pools among the roots of the tree. Here is Nimrodel, said Legolas. Of this stream the Sylvan elves made many songs long ago, and still we sing them in the north, remembering the rainbow of its falls, and the golden flowers that floated in its foam. All is dark now, and the bridge of Nimrodel is broken down. I will bathe my feet, for it is said that the water is healing to the weary. He went forward and climbed down the deep-cloven bank and stepped into the stream. Follow me, he cried. The water is not deep. Just wade across. On the further bank we can rest, and the sound of the falling water may bring us sleep and forgetfulness of grief. One by one they climbed down, followed Legolas. For a moment Frodo stood near the brink, and let the water flow over his tired feet. But it was cold, its touch was clean, and as he went on, and it mounted to his knees, he felt that the stain of travel and all weariness was washed from his limbs. When all the company had crossed, they sat and rested, and ate a little food. And Legolas told them tales of Lothlórien, that the elves of Mirkwood still kept in their hearts, of sunlight and starlight upon the meadows by the great river before the world was grey. At length a silence fell, and they heard the music of the waterfall running sweetly in the shadows. Almost Frodo fancied that he could hear voices singing, mingled with the sound of the water. Do you hear the voice of Nimrodel? Said Legolas. I will sing you a song of the maiden Nimrodel, who bore the same name as the stream beside which she lived long ago. It is a fair song in our woodland tongue. This is how it runs in the western speech. I summon Rivendell now sing it. In a soft voice hardly to be heard amidst the rustle of the leaves above them, he began. Alright, I guess I'm singing to you again. Please give me a moment. Okay. Let's see how well I do this time. I know I'm not the best singer, but some of these songs, they don't go the direction you expect them to. Puts you up. There we go. An elven maiden there was of old, a shining star by day. Her mantle white was hemmed with gold, hues of silver grey. A star was bound upon her brows, a light was on her hair, a sun upon the golden boughs, in Lothlórien the fair. Her hair was long, her limbs were white, and fair she was and free, and in the wind she went as light as leaf of linden tree. Beside the falls of Nimrodel, by water clear and cool, her voice as falling silver fell into the shining pool. Where now she wanders none can tell, in sunlight or in shade, for lost of yore was Nimrodel, and in the mountains stayed. The elven ship in haven grey, beneath the mountain lee, awaited her for many a day, beside the roaring sea. A wind by night in northern lands, and rose and loud it cried, and drove the ship from elven strands across the streaming tide. When dawn came dim, the land was lost, the mountains sinking grey, beyond the heaving waves that tossed their plumes of blinding spray. Amroth beheld the fading shore, now low beyond the swell, and cursed the faithless ship that bore him far from Nimrodel. Of old he was an elven king, a lord of tree and glen, when golden were the boughs in spring, in fair Lothlórien. From helm to sea they saw him leap, as arrow from the string, and dive into the water deep, as mew upon the wing. The wind was in his flowing hair, foam about him shone. Afar they saw him strong and fair, go riding like a swan. But from the west has come no word, and on the hither shore no tidings elven folk have heard of Amroth evermore. I feel like that was my best attempt so far. I may be biased though. The voice of Legolas faltered, and the song ceased. I cannot sing any more, he said. That is but a part, for I have forgotten much. It is long and sad, for it tells how sorrow came upon Lothlórien, Lórien of the Blossom, when the dwarves awakened evil in the mountains. But the dwarves did not make the evil, said Gimli. I said not so, yet evil came, answered Legolas sadly. Then many of the elves of Nimrodil's kind left their dwellings and departed, and she was lost far in the south, in the passes of the White Mountains, and she came not to the ship where Amroth her lover waited for her. But in the spring when the wind is in the new leaves, the echo of her voice may still be heard by the falls that bear her name. And when the wind is in the south, the voice of Amroth comes up from the sea. The Nimrodil flows into Silverlow, that elves call Celebrant, and Celebrant into Anduin the Great. And Anduin flows into the Bay of Belfalas, whence the elves of Lórien sail. But neither Nimrodil nor Amroth ever came back. It is told that she had a house built in the branches of a tree that grew near the falls. That was the custom of the elves of Lórien, to dwell in the trees. Maybe it is so still. Therefore they call him Galadrim. Therefore they were called the Galadrim, the Tree People. Deep in their forest the trees are very great. The people of the woods did not dwell in the ground like dwarves, nor build strong places of stone before the shadow came. And even in these later days, dwelling in the trees might be thought safer than sitting on the ground. Oh, I hate it when they randomly change who's speaking. And even in these latter days, dwelling in the trees might be safer than sitting on the ground, said Gimli. He looked across the stream to the road that led back to the Dimbril Dale, and then up into the roof of dark boughs above. Your words bring good counsel, Gimli, said Aragorn. We cannot build a house, but tonight we will do as the Galadrim, and seek refuge in the treetops if we can. We have sat here beside the road already longer than was wise. The company now turned aside from the path, and went into the shadow of the deeper woods, westward along the mountain stream, away from the Silver Lode. Not far from the falls of Nimrodil, they found a cluster of trees, some of which overhung the stream. Their great grey trunks were of mighty girth, but their height could not be guessed. I will climb up, said Legolas. I am at home among trees, by root or bough, though these trees are of a kind strange to me, save as a name in song. Melin, they are called, and are those that bear the yellow blossom, but I have never climbed in one. I will see now what is their shape and way of growth. Whatever it may be, said Pippin, they will be marvellous trees indeed, if they can offer any rest at night. Except the birds, I cannot sleep on a perch. Then dig a hole in the ground, said Legolas, if that is more after the fashion of your kind. But you must dig swift and deep, if you wish to hide from the orcs. He sprang lightly up from the ground, and caught a branch that grew from the trunk high above his head. But even as he swung there for a moment, a voice spoke suddenly from the tree shadows about him. Daro, it said in commanding voice, and Legolas dropped back to earth in surprise and fear. He shrank against the bole of the tree. Stand still, he whispered to the others. Do not move or speak. There was a sound of soft laughter over their heads, and then another clear voice spoke in Elven tongue. Frodo could understand little of what was said, but the speech that the Sylvan folk east of the mountain used among themselves was unlike that of the west. Legolas looked up and answered in the same language. Who are they, and what do they say? Said Merry. They're elves, said Sam. Can't you hear their voices? Yes, they are elves, said Legolas, and they say that you breathe so loud they could shoot you in the dark. Sam hastily put his hand over his mouth. But they say also that you have no need to fear. They have been aware of us for a long while. They heard my voice across the Nimrodil, and knew that I was one of their northern kind, and therefore they did not hinder our crossing. And afterwards they heard my song. Now they bid me climb up with Frodo, but they seem to have had some tidings of him and of our journey. The others they ask to wait a little, and to keep watch at the foot of the tree, until they have decided what is to be done. Allow me just a moment. Alright, that is 10 pages, so I will take a short 5-10 minute break from my voice, but then I will be back. So I will see you all very shortly. Nika, you're in charge. Alright, since some of you enjoyed the reverb, I'll do a little test to see if I can find a less echoey. You're going to hear me double for a little bit. Alright, how's this? Do you think that this fits a lot better? A lot less echoey, just a hint of reverb. Oh, it's still there, Therian. It's just a lot lower. Alright, I'll leave it on 6%. Just enough for a hint. Alright. So does this all sound good to you? Testing 1, 2, 3. I don't want to ruin the experience if it makes it a lot less relaxing with it though. Because that's my main goal with this. I don't want to make it too exciting, so to speak. Too off-putting. Pardon me. I also need more water. Am I still muted? No, you can. Alright. I will continue where we left off. They had just run into the elves. Out of the shadows, a ladder was let down. It was made of rope, silver grey, and glimmering in the dark. And though it looked slender, it proved strong enough to bear many men. The microphone fell down. There we go. Legolas ran up lightly, and Frodo followed slowly. Behind came Sam, trying not to breathe too loudly. The branches of the Malorn tree grew out nearly straight from the trunk, and then swept upwards. Near the top, the main stem divided into a crown of many boughs, and among these they found that there had been built a wooden platform, or a flet, as such things were called in those days. The elves called it a talon. It was reached by a round hole in the centre, through which the ladder was passed. When Frodo came at last up onto the flet, he found Legolas seated with 3 other elves. They were... Oh, I was wondering what I was missing. The music. I really am out of practice. Ah, much better. They were clad in shadowy grey, and could not be seen among the tree stems unless they moved suddenly. They stood up, and one of them uncovered a small lamp that gave out a slender silver beam. He held it up, looking at Frodo's face and Sam's. Then he shut off the light again and spoke words of welcome in his elven tongue. I'm not taking that call. Yes, go away, phone call. Okay, so apologies for all those interruptions. Frodo spoke haltingly in return. Welcome, the elf then said, again in the common language, speaking slowly. We seldom use any tongue but our own, but we dwell now in the heart of the forest, and do not willingly have dealings with any other folk. Even our own kindred in the north are sundered from us, but there are some of us still who go abroad for the gathering of the news and the watching of our enemies, and they speak the languages of other lands. I am one. Haldir is my name. My brothers, Rumiel and Orifin, speak little of your tongue. But we have heard rumors of your coming, for the messengers of Elrond passed by Lothlórien on their way home up the Dimral Stair. We had not heard of hobbits, of halflings, for many a long year. They did not know that any yet dwelt in Middle-earth. You do not look evil, and since you come with an elf of our kindred, we are willing to befriend you, as Elrond asked, though it is not our custom to lead strangers through our land. But you must stay here tonight. How many are you? 8, said Legolas. Myself, 4 hobbits, and 2 men, one of whom, Aragorn, is an elf friend of the folk of Westerness. The name of Aragorn, son of Arathorn, is known in Lothlórien, said Haldir, and he has the favour of the lady. All then is well, but you have yet spoken only of 7. The 8th is a dwarf, said Legolas. A dwarf, said Haldir. That is not well. We have not had dealings with the dwarves since the dark days. They are not permitted in our land, and I cannot allow him to pass. But he is from the Lonely Mountain, one of Dane's trusty people and friendly to Elrond, said Frodo. Elrond himself chose him to be one of our companions, and he has been brave and faithful. The elves spoke together in soft voices, and questioned Legolas in their own tongue. Very good, said Haldir at last. We will do this, though it is against our liking. If Aragorn and Legolas will guard him and answer for him, he shall pass. But he must go blindfolded through Lothlórien. But now we must debate no longer. Your folk must not remain on the ground. We have been keeping watch on the rivers, ever since we saw a great troop of orcs going north towards Moria, along the skirts of the mountains many days ago. Wolves are howling on the wood's borders. If you have indeed come from Moria, the peril cannot be far behind. Tomorrow, early on, you must go. The 4 hobbits shall climb up here and stay with us. We do not fear them. There is another Talan in the next tree. There the others will take refuge. You, Legolas, must answer to us for them. Call us if anything is amiss, and have an eye on that dwarf. Legolas at once went down the ladder to take Haldir's message, and soon afterwards Merry and Pippin clambered up onto the high flet. They were out of breath and seemed rather scared. There, said Merry, panting, we have lugged up your blankets as well as our own. Strider has hidden all the rest of our baggage in a deep drift of leaves. You had no need of your burdens, said Haldir. It is cold in the treetops in winter, though the wind tonight is in the south. For we have food and drink to give you that will drive away the night chill. We have skins and cloaks to spare. The hobbits accepted this second, and far better, supper very gladly. Oh fuck, where's... There it is. Then they wrapped themselves warmly, not only in the fur cloaks of the elves, but in their own blankets as well, and tried to go to sleep. But weary as they were, only Sam found that easy to do. Hobbits do not like heights, and do not sleep upstairs even when they have any stairs. The flat was not at all to their liking as a bedroom. It had no walls, not even a rail. Only on one side was there a light-plated screen, which could be moved and fixed in different places according to the wind. Pippin went on talking for a while. "I hope, if I do go to sleep in this bed loft, that I shan't roll off," he said. "Once I do get to sleep," said Sam, "I shall go on sleeping whether I'd roll off or no. And the less said, the sooner I'll drop off, if you take my meaning." Frodo lay awake for some time, and looked up at the stars glinting through the pale roof of quivering leaves. Sam was snoring at his side long before he himself closed his eyes. He could dimly see the grey forms of two elves sitting motionless with their arms about their knees, speaking in whispers. The other had gone down to take up his watch on one of the lower branches. At last, lulled by the wind in the boughs above, and the sweet murmur of the falls of Nimrodil below, Frodo fell asleep with the song of Legolas running in his mind. Late in the night he awoke. The other hobbits were asleep. The elves were gone. The sickle moon was gleaming dimly among the leaves. The wind was still. A little way off he heard a harsh laugh, and the tread of many feet on the ground below. There was a ring of metal. The sounds died slowly away, and seemed to go southward on into the wood. A head appeared suddenly through the hole in the flat. Frodo sat up in alarm, and saw that it was grey-hooded elf. He looked towards the hobbits. "What is it?" said Frodo, said the elf in a hissing whisper, and cast onto the flat the rope ladder rolled up. "Orcs," said Frodo. "What are they doing?" The elf had gone. There were no more sounds. Even the leaves were silent, and the very falls seemed to be hushed. Frodo sat and shivered in his wraps. He was thankful they had not been caught on the ground, but he felt that the trees offered little protection, except concealment. Orcs were as keen as hounds on the scent, it was said, but they could also climb. He drew out Sting, and flashed and glittered like a blue flame, and then slowly faded again and grew dull. In spite of the fading of his sword, the feeling of immediate danger did not leave Frodo. Rather, it grew stronger. He got up and crawled to the opening and peered down. It was almost certain that he could hear stealthy movements at the tree's foot far below. Not elves, for the woodland folk were altogether noiseless in their movements. Then he heard a sound like sniffling, and something seemed to be scrabbling on the bark of the tree trunk. He stared down into the dark, holding his breath. Something was now climbing slowly, and its breath came like a soft hissing through closed teeth. Then, coming up close to the stem, Frodo saw two pale eyes. They stopped and gazed upward, unwinking. Suddenly they turned away, and a shadowy figure slipped round the trunk and vanished. Immediately afterwards, Haldir came climbing swiftly up through the branches. "There was something in this tree that I have never seen before," he said. "It was not an orc. It fled as soon as I touched the tree stem. It seemed to be wearing, to have some skill in trees, or I might have thought it was one of you hobbits. I did not shoot, for I dared not arouse any cries. We cannot risk battle. A strong company of orcs has passed. They crossed the Nimrodil, cursed their foul feet in its clean water, and went on down the old road beside the river. They seemed to pick up some scent, and they searched the ground for a while near the place where you halted. The three of us could not challenge 100, so we went ahead and spoke with feigned voices, leading them on into the wood. Orifin has now gone in haste back to our dwellings to warn our people. None of the orcs will ever return to Lothlórien, and there will be many elves hidden on the northern border before another night falls. But you must take the road south as soon as it is fully light." Day came pale from the east. As the light grew, it filtered through the yellow leaves of the mallow, and it seemed to the hobbits that the early sun of a cool summer's morning was shining. Pale blue sky peeped through the moving branches. Looking through an opening on the south side of the flat, Frodo saw all the valley of the Silverlode lying, a sea of fallow gold, tossing gently in the breeze. The morning was still young and cold when the company set out again, guided now by Haldir and his brother Rúmil. "Farewell, sweet Nimrodil," cried Legolas. Frodo looked back and caught a gleam of white foam among the grey tree stems. "Farewell," he said. It seemed to him that he would never hear again a running water so beautiful, forever blending its innumerable notes in an endless, changeless music. They went back to the path that still went on along the west side of the Silverlode, and for some way they followed it southward. There were prints of orc feet in the earth, but soon Haldir turned aside into the trees and halted on the bank of the river under their shadows. "There is one of my people yonder across the stream," he said, "though you may not see him." He gave a call like the low whistle of a bird, and out of a thicket of young trees an elf stepped, clad in grey but with his hood thrown back. His hair glinted like gold in the morning sun. Haldir skillfully cast over the stream a coil of grey rope, and he caught it and bound the end about a tree near the bank. "The Celebrant is already a strong stream here, as you can see," said Haldir, "and it runs both swift and deep, and is very cold. We do not set foot in it so far north unless we must, but in these days of watchfulness we do not make breaches. This is how we cross. Follow me." He made his end of the rope fast about another tree, and then ran lightly along it, over the river and back again, as if he were on a road. "I can walk this path," said Legolas, "but the others have not skill. Must they swim?" "No," said Haldir, "we have 2 more ropes. We will fasten them above the other, one shoulder high and another half high, and holding these, strangers should be able to cross with care." When this slender bridge had been made, the company passed over, some cautiously and slowly, others more easily. Of the hobbits, Pippin proved the best, for he was sure-footed. He walked over quickly, holding only with one hand, but he kept his eyes on the bank ahead and did not look down. Sam shuffled along, clutching hard, and looked down into the pale, eddying waters as if it were a chasm in the mountains. He breathed with a sigh of relief when he was safely across. "Live and learn," as my gaffer used to say. Though he was thinking of gardening, not of roosting like a bird, of trying to walk like a spider. That even my Uncle Andy ever tried a trick like that. When at length all the company was gathered on the east bank of the Silverlode, the elves untied the ropes and coiled 2 of them. Rúmil, who had remained on the other side, drew back the last one, slung it over his shoulder, and with a wave of his hand went away, back to Nimrodil to keep watch. "Now, friends," said Haldir, "you have entered the Nath of Lothlórien, or the Gore, as you would say, for it is the land that lies like a spearhead between the arms of Silverlode and Anduin the Great. We allow no strangers to spy out the secrets of the Nath. Few indeed are permitted to even set foot there. As was agreed, I shall here blindfold the eyes of Gimli the dwarf. The others may walk free for a while, till we come near our dwellings, down in Egladil, in the angle between the waters." This was not to the liking at all of Gimli. "The agreement was made without my consent," he said. "I will not walk blindfold like a beggar or a prisoner, and I am no spy. My folk have never had dealings with any of the servants of the enemy. Neither have we done harm to the elves. I am no more likely to betray you than Legolas, or any other of my companions." "I do not doubt you," said Haldir. "Yet this is our law. I am not the master of the law and cannot set it aside. I have done much in letting you set foot over Celebrant." Gimli was obstinate. He planted his feet firmly apart, and laid his hand upon the haft of his axe. "I will go free," he said, "or I will go back and seek my own land, where I am known to be true of word, though I perish alone in the wilderness." "You cannot go back," said Haldir sternly. "Now you have come thus far, you must be brought before the Lord and the Lady. They will judge you, to hold you or to give you leave, as they will. You cannot cross the rivers again, and behind you there are now secret sentinels you cannot pass. You will be slain before you saw them." Gimli drew his axe from his belt. Haldir and his companions bent their bows. "A plague upon dwarves and their stiff necks," said Legolas. "Come," said Aragorn. "If I am to lead this company, you must do as I bid. It is hard upon the dwarf to thus be singled out. We will all be blindfolded, even Legolas. That will be best, though it will make the journey slow and dull." Gimli laughed suddenly. "A merry troop of fools we shall look. Will Haldir lead us all on a string, like many blind beggars with one dog? But I will be content, if only Legolas here shares my blindness." "I am an elf and a kinsman here," said Legolas, becoming angry in his turn. "Now let us cry, a plague on the stiff necks of elves," said Aragorn. "But the company shall all fare alike. Come, blind our eyes, Haldir." "I shall claim full amends for every pole and stubbed toe if you do not lead us well," said Gimli as they bound the cloth about his eyes. "You will have no claim," said Haldir. "I shall lead you well, and the paths are smooth and straight." "Alas for the folly of these days," said Legolas. "Here all are the enemies of the one enemy, and yet I must walk blind, while the sun is merry in the woodland under leaves of gold." "Folly it may seem," said Haldir. "Indeed, in nothing is the power of the Dark Lord more clearly shown than in the estrangement that divides all those who still oppose him. Yet so little faith and trust do we now find in the world beyond Lothlórien, unless, maybe in Rivendell, that we dare not, by our own trust, endanger our land. We live now upon an island amid many perils, and our hands are more often upon the bowstring than upon the harp. The rivers long defended us, but they are a sure guard no more, for the shadow has crept northwards all about us. Some speak of departing, yet for that it already seems too late. The mountains to the west are growing evil. To the east the lands are a waste, full of Sauron's creatures, and it is rumoured that we cannot now safely pass southwards through Rohan, and the mouths of the great river are watched by the enemy. Even if we could come to the shores of the sea, we should find no longer any shelter there. It is said that there are still havens of the High Elves, but they are far north and west, beyond the land of the halflings. But where that may be, the Lord and Lady may know. I do not." "You ought to at least to guess, since you have seen us," said Merry. "There are elf havens west of my lands, the Shire, where the hobbits live." "Happy folk are hobbits to dwell near the shores of the sea," said Haldir. "It is long indeed since any of my folk have looked on it, yet still we remember it in song. Tell me of these havens as we walk." "I cannot," said Merry. "I have never seen them. I have never been out of my own land before, and if I had known what the world outside was like, I don't think I should have had the heart to leave it." "Not even to see fair Lothlórien," said Haldir. "The world is indeed full of peril, and in it there are many dark places. But still there is much that is fair, and though in all lands love is now mingled with grief, it grows perhaps the greater." "Some there are among us who sing that the shadow will draw back, and peace will come again. But I do not believe that the world about us will ever be again as it was of old, or the light of the sun as it was aforetime. The elves, I fear, will prove at best a truce, which they may pass to the sea unhindered, and leave Middle-earth forever. Alas for Lothlórien that I love! It would be a poor life in a land where no malorn tree grew. But if there are malorn trees beyond the great sea, none have reported it." As they spoke thus, the company filed slowly along the paths. In the wood led by Haldir, while the other elf walked behind, they felt the ground beneath their feet soft and smooth, and after a while they walked more freely, without fear of hurt or fall. Despite being deprived of sight, Frodo found his hearing and other senses sharpened. He could smell the trees and the trodden grass. He could hear many different notes in the rustle of the leaves overhead, the river murmuring away on his right, and the thin voices of the birds in the sky. He felt the sun upon his face and hands when they passed through an open glade. As soon as he set foot upon the far bank of Silverlode, a strange feeling had come upon him, and it deepened as he walked on into the Nath. It seemed to him that he had stepped over a bridge of time into a corner of the elder days, and was now walking in a world that was no more. In Rivendell there was memory of ancient things. In Lothlórien, the ancient things still lived on in the waking world. Evil had been seen and heard here. Sorrow had been known. The elves feared and distrusted the world outside. Wolves were now howling on the wood's borders, but on the land of Lothlórien no shadow lay. Hello, creepy, welcome. I'm glad you could make it. Made it. I'm glad you could make it. And a year. Congratulations, happy birthday. Shall we make you a cake, or is a cupcake okay? Thank you for that subscription note, it's very sweet. Every dollar for the channel goes back into it. Also, you may notice a tiny little reverb on my voice. I left it on earlier, much higher. That was my mistake. Safi will not be happy about that. But I've lowered it to what I feel is an acceptable level. All that day the company marched on, until they felt the cool evening come and heard the early night wind whispering among many leaves. Then they rested and slept without fear upon the ground, for their guides would not permit them to unbind their eyes, and they could not climb. In the morning they went on again, walking without hassle. At noon they halted, and Frodo was aware that they had passed out under the shining sun. Suddenly he heard the sound of many voices all around them. A marching host of elves had come up silently. They were hastening towards the northern borders to guard against any attack from Moria. And they brought news, some of which Haldir reported. The marauding orcs had been waylaid and almost all destroyed. The remnant had fled westwards toward the mountains and were being pursued. A strange creature also had been seen, running with bent back and with hands near the ground, like a beast, and yet not of beast shape. It eluded capture, and they had not shot it, not knowing whether it was good or ill, and it had vanished down the Silverlode southward. Also, said Haldir, they bring me message, the Lord and Lady of the Galadrim. You are all to walk free, even the dwarf Gimli. It seems that the lady knows who and what is each member of your company. New messages have come from Rivendell, perhaps. He removed the bandage from Gimli's eyes. First, your pardon, he said, bowing low. Look on us now with friendly eyes. Look and be glad, for you are the first dwarf to behold the trees of the Nath of Lothlórien since Durin's day. When his eyes were in turn uncovered, Frodo looked up and caught his breath. They were standing in an open space. To the left stood a great mound covered with a sward of grass, as green as springtime in the elder days. Upon it, as a double crown, grew 2 circles of trees. The outer had bark of snowy white and were leafless, beautiful in their shapely nakedness. The inner were mallow trees of great height, still arrayed in pale gold. Oh, the music ran out. Hold on. There we go. High amid the branches of a towering tree that stood in the center of all there gleamed a white flat. At the feet of the trees, and all about the green hillsides, the grass was studded with small golden flowers, shaped like stars. Among them, nodding on slender stalks, were other flowers, white and palest green, They glimmered as a mist amid the rich hue of the grass. Over all the sky was blue, and the sun of afternoon glowed upon the hill and cast long green shadows beneath the trees. "Behold, you are come to Seren Amroth," said Haldir. "For this is the heart of the ancient realm as it was long ago, and here is the mound of Amroth, where in happier days his high house was built. Here ever bloom the winter flowers in the unfading grass, yellow Eleanor and the pale Nifredil. Here we will stay a while, and come to the city of the Galadrim at dusk." The others cast themselves down upon the fragrant grass. Frodo stood a while, still lost in wonder. It seemed to him that he had stepped through a high window that looked on a vanished world. A light was upon it for which his language had no name. All that he saw was shapely. The shapes seemed at once clear-cut, as if they had been first conceived and drawn at the uncovering of his eyes, and ancient as if they had endured forever. He saw no colour but those he knew, gold and white and blue and green. They were fresh and poignant, as if he had at that moment first perceived them, and made for them names new and wonderful. In winter here no heart could mourn for summer or spring. No blemish or sickness or deformity could be seen in anything that grew upon the earth. On the land of Lothlórien there was no stain. He turned and saw that Sam was now standing beside him, looking around with a puzzled expression, and rubbing his eyes as if he was not sure he was truly awake. "It's the sunlight and bright day right enough," he said. "I thought that elves were all for moon and star. This is more elvish than anything I've ever heard tell of. I feel as if I was inside a song, if you take my meaning." Haldir looked at them, and he seemed indeed to take the meaning of both thought and word. He smiled. "You feel the power of the Lady of the Galadrim," he said. "Would it please you to climb with me up Seren Amroth?" They followed him as he stepped lightly up the grass-clad slopes, though he walked and breathed, and about him living leaves and flowers were stirred by the same cool wind as fanned his face. Frodo felt that he was in a timeless land that did not fade or change, or fall into forgetfulness, when he had gone and passed again into the outer world. Still Frodo the Wanderer from the Shire would walk there, upon the grass among Eleanor and Nifredil in fair Lothlórien. They entered the circle of white trees, and as they did so, the south wind blew upon Seren Amroth and sighed among the branches. Frodo stood still, hearing afar off great seas upon beaches that had long ago been washed away, seabirds crying whose race had perished from the earth. Haldir had gone on, and was now climbing to the high fleck. As Frodo prepared to follow him, he laid his hand upon the tree beside the ladder. Never before had he been so suddenly and so keenly aware of the feel and texture of a tree's skin, and of the life within. He felt a delight in the wood, and the touch of it, neither as forester nor as carpenter. It was the delight of the living tree itself. As he stepped out at last upon the lofty platform, Haldir took his hand and turned him toward the south. "Look this way first," he said. Frodo looked and saw, still at some distance, a hill of many mighty trees, a city of green towers. Which it was he could not tell. Out of it seemed to him that the power and light came that held all the land in sway. He longed suddenly to fly like a bird, to rest in the green city. Then he looked eastward, saw all the land of Lothlórien running down to the pale gleam of Anduin, the great river. He lifted his eyes across the river, and all the light went out. He was back again in the world he knew. Beyond the river, the land appeared flat and empty, formless and vague, until far away it rose again like a wall, dark and drear. The sun that lay on Lothlórien had no power to enlighten the shadow of that distant height. "There lies the fastness of southern Mirkwood," said Haldir. "It is clad in a forest of dark fir. The trees strive one against another, and the branches rot and wither. In the midst upon a stony height stands Dol Guldur, where long the hidden enemy had his dwelling. Fear that now it is inhabited again, and with power sevenfold. A black cloud lies often over it of late. In this high place you may see the two powers that are opposed to one another, and ever they strive now in thought, but whereas the light perceives the very heart of the darkness, its own secret has not been discovered, not yet. He turned and climbed swiftly down, and they followed him. At the hill's foot Frodo found Aragorn, standing still and silent as a tree. In his hand was a small golden bloom of Elenor, and the light was in his eyes. He was wrapped in some fair memory, and as Frodo looked at him, he knew that he beheld things as they once had been in the same place. For the grim years were removed from the face of Aragorn, and he seemed clothed in white, a young lord tall and fair, and he spoke words in Elvish tongue, the one whom Frodo could not see. Arwen Vanimelda Namari, he said, and then he drew a breath, and returning out of his thought, he looked at Frodo and smiled. Here is the heart of Elvendom on earth, he said, and here my heart dwells ever, unless there be a light beyond the dark roads that we must still tread, you and I. Come with me, and taking Frodo's hand in his, he left the hill of Ser and Amroth, and came there never again as a living man. That was the end of chapter 18. We are now up to page 396. And there is only 458 pages. There's almost only 50 pages left. And next time, we will be going into the city of Caras Galadon, which I know some people are excited for. But now, allow me a moment to find someone who I can send you all off to. Let's see, who is streaming at this time? Ah, I know just the person. For he's streaming The Lord of the Rings online. That's awfully convenient. Well, thank you for coming, Creepy. It wouldn't be the same without people here to listen. Otherwise, I'd just be talking to myself. Let's see, did I spelled his name correct? Excellent. Be sure to treat him nicely. I've watched him for a couple of years. He really enjoys Lord of the Rings Online. It's his main game, and he's quite passionate about it. Safi and I will see you all next week. With or without reverb, I shall have to see. But until then, farewell.